You hear the Chinese students singing, "We shall overcome." Sounded sweet as it did then at the March on Washington. They quoted Gandhi and Dr. King. There was freedom in the air. They gave flowers to the soldiers in Tiananmen Square. My brothers and my sisters, don't give in to despair. Seeds you plant today may bloom in a field you know not where. Who'd have thought all those years ago, when we marched for freedom here, they'd be singing, "We shall overcome" in Tiananmen Square. Did you see the goddess of democracy trampled to the ground, and the People's Liberation Army shoot the people down? It made me think of Kent State and Jackson State and the students who died there. It's a long way from Ohio and Mississippi to Tiananmen Square. My brothers, they can clean the streets and wash the blood from the bullet-ridden walls, but alone against their sea of tanks, one unarmed man stood tall. And they can't erase that photograph, no matter how they dare. Say nothing ever happened in Tiananmen Square. Last time, my brothers and my sisters, don't give in to despair. Seeds you plant today may bloom in a field you know not where. Who'd have thought all those years ago, when we marched for freedom here, they'd be singing, "We shall overcome" in Tiananmen Square. Thank you very much.
Welcome. My name is Tony Gabriel, President of the Visual Artists Guild. The Visual Artists Guild is a nonprofit organization that champions the right of freedom of speech and expression internationally. In 1989, a week after the Tiananmen Massacre, Tom Van Sant, a sculptor and a member of the Visual Artists Guild, with his fellow artists, built a 23-foot replica of the goddess of democracy. It was a replica of the one destroyed that same year at Tiananmen Square in Beijing. They placed this replica in front of Los Angeles City Hall, symbolically, back in 1989. Since then, the Visual Artists Guild has conducted commemoration events every year. We changed from an in-person event to a virtual event after the pandemic hit in 2020. Please welcome Anne Lau, Chairperson of the Visual Artists Guild. Anne will give the commemoration speech.
Thank you, Tony. I'd like to invite everyone to come on screen so that we can have a candlelight ritual together. Please turn on your phone flashlights. And please come on and turn on your screen, your video, so we can be together. We invite all the attendees to turn on the screen. Okay. We have often been asked, why do we keep observing the memory of what happened so long ago? After all, it has been 34 years. China is now the world's second biggest economy. Yet, has China changed since then? As we can see from our awardees this year, the yearnings for human rights and democracy have not diminished, even as the repressions in China have gotten worse. In that spring of 1989, we saw the hope of the Tiananmen generation. Millions marched to Tiananmen Square in Beijing. With the students leading the way, all walks of life in Beijing participated. When the students started the hunger strike, we saw the love that was expressed by the citizens of Beijing. We saw the euphoria in the square, hopeful that China was on the road to change. We saw the unity of purpose. For the first time, people in China realized that others were thinking the same about their own government. They spoke the truth. They celebrated each other. They gave each other a gift of freedom, the freedom from fear. That is the spirit of Tiananmen. Thank you. We'd like now to ask you to turn off your flashlights. And we also ask that you will stay till the end of the program so that we can recognize each and every one of you. Because without your participation, there won't be any commemoration. I now turn control back to Tony.
Thank you, Anne. We will now go to the next portion of this commemoration with the awarding to our honorees. Let's bring us back Anne Lau to present an award to Sharon Hong.
Thank you, Tony. Sharon Hong has been an important fixture within the human rights arena. A Fulbright scholar on law, Sharon planted the seeds of the rule of law in students in China, starting in 1986. She taught for 2 years in Beijing at the then China University of Politics and Law. For 10 summers, she ran an intensive law training program for law teachers, lawyers, and legal workers at 8 different law schools in China. She has trained lawyers at Tsinghua University School of Law, one of China's top-ranked universities. She participated in legal education exchange in China. She guided Human Rights in China, a nonprofit organization based in New York for more than 20 years in promoting human rights issues on China. As Executive Director of Human Rights in China, Sharon has presented before key European, US, and international policymakers on a variety of human rights issues, including Hong Kong. She has testified at the US Congressional Commission on China. She has engaged with media here and abroad on those issues. In addition to publishing her researches in law publications, Sharon also had written a number of books on the rule of law. In 2007, she was named by the Wall Street Journal as one of the 50 women to watch. Sharon is professor of law emeritus at the City University of New York School of Law and currently an adjunct professor of law in New York University. In 2019, Sharon was a visiting professor at the University of Hong Kong. For her dedication and unwavering promotion of the legal and human rights of the Chinese in China, Visual Artists Guild is honored to present Sharon Hong with the Spirit of Tiananmen Award. Please welcome Sharon Hong.
Thank you, Anne, for that very kind introduction. And thank you to the Visual Arts Guild for this award. It is a great honor and humbling to be recognized today alongside the other honorees. You have all provided witness, inspiration, leadership, and solidarity to so many activists, including me, and to the whole human rights community. Dr. de Belong, David Kilgore, and Paul Dingyatso, although no longer physically with us, they live on in our collective resistance legacy and in the loving memories of family, friends, and comrades in the struggle. HRIC, as many of you know, was created in March 1989 to support the growing democracy movement in Beijing and spreading around the country. Since 1989, we have supported hundreds of courageous individuals and groups like the Tiananmen Mothers to expose ongoing and expanding rights violations and to demand official accountability and respect for human dignity, which is at the center and the whole purpose of human rights. Mi-Ling Tsui, who also retired from HRIC after almost 14 years of service, recently described our amazing colleagues as multi-talented, wise, calm, and graceful under pressure, indomitable, resourceful, kind, clever, cheeky, feisty, devoted, inspiring. I would just add with appreciation, incredibly generous and kind to me in my extremely challenging role. So I accept this Spirit of Tiananmen Award on behalf of the entire HRIC family and community that I have been privileged to work with for over 23 years. This work is a collective effort, and none of us can survive or endure alone. This work is also a long-term struggle, bridging generations, diverse communities joined together by our common cause to act, despite the repression reaching across borders and despite the climate of fear that is fueled by an authoritarian regime. I was very fortunate to start my law teaching at the CUNY School of Law, which was the first public interest law school in the country. During my 18 years, I was also so fortunate to teach both in mainland China and in Hong Kong. And in 1986, there was so much energy and hope for change in the air. My graduate students and Chinese law colleagues were working on drafting new laws and new legislation and introducing new concepts. But I didn't see my purpose there to export American law. I saw my purpose as to counter the traditional Chinese educational system, 填鸭, stuffing the goose, to encourage and nurture critical thinking, creative problem solving, and engagement with a professional responsibility to the community. But critical thinking is one of the biggest threats to an authoritarian regime. The dismantling and gutting of the liberal studies curriculum in Hong Kong is an example. Liberal studies sought and succeeded in producing generations of creative, socially conscious, and committed young Hong Kong people. We saw them in action in 2014, 2019, and we are seeing this legacy in the rise of the A4 movement. As a visiting professor at HKU in 2019, living on campus, I was awestruck every day by the passion, the creativity, and the organizational capacity of the students. So remembering is more necessary than ever, because to remember is the first step in ongoing resistance. And over 3 decades, the Tiananmen Mothers and others have powerfully reminded us ongoing impunity for past rights abuses and violations enable current and future abuses and violations. So I do want to flag here quickly the opening of the June 4th Museum in New York that Zhou Fengsaw, former June 4th student leader and the new ED of HRIC, and a team of democracy activists have curated and built. It will also include an exhibit on Hong Kong and will be open to the public by appointment. And the details, you can get it at 64ma.org. Let me close with a question that people have asked me over the years, especially younger people who even 30 years ago saw me as incredibly ancient, amazed that I was still alive and energetic. They asked me, how can you stay so optimistic and hopeful in the face of what seems like impossible, stacked odds? So I recall once when I was interviewing a Chinese applicant for a visiting scholar position at a US law school. His research proposal focused on introducing constitutionalism into the Chinese legal system, an impossible concept then and still now, which I had pointed out to him at the time. And he responded, looked at me and said, yes, yes, impossible. But the starting point is the future. Nick Cave, one of my favorite performers, writers, describes optimism as hope with a broken heart. So, like many of you, I also carry a broken heart, especially in these dark times. But I try to practice a strategic optimism, together in solidarity with all of you who carry an unbroken spirit. So thank you again for this recognition, and I look forward to our paths inevitably crossing again in the future.
Sharon, your contributions to the rule of law in China are really just so impressive. Even though you have stepped down from a leadership position with the Human Rights in China organization, we all know you're going to continue your support of their human rights advocacy in the future. Our next awardee is Dr. Frank DeBolla. Regret to say that Dr. DeBolla passed away last year at the age of 80. Accepting this posthumous award is his son, Frank DeBolla III. I invite Ann Lau to come back and present this award.
Thank you, Tony. Dr. Frank DeBolla was born in Hungary and came to the US at the age of 8. His non-government organization, the Captive Nations, brought Hungarians, Chinese, Polish, Czechoslovakians, East Germans, Latvians together to support Visual Artists Guild's mission. He also formed the Ethnic Leadership Council, and it was Dr. DeBolla who connected us with many former Hungarian freedom fighters, whom we honored at our Visual Artists Guild 2006 Hungarian Revolution of 1956. Indeed, the Hungarian Revolution was the beginning of the end of the communist captive nations of Eastern Europe. Dr. DeBolla never forgot his roots in Hungary. He supported their causes. A few years ago at the monthly gathering of the Ethnic Leadership Council, he mentioned that he would be celebrating his birthday at Bucharest. I asked if I was invited, and he said if I would go there. Of course, I said I would go. So my husband and I ended up inviting ourselves to his birthday party in Bucharest and had a great time meeting his friends and relatives there. Dr. Frank DeBolla and the members of his Ethnic Leadership Council was a constant presence at Visual Artists Guild's events. In more than one occasion, as a Los Angeles County Commissioner, he had the Los Angeles County Supervisors honor Visual Artists Guild with a commendation on the anniversary of the Tiananmen Massacre. For his lifetime support of freedom for not just the Hungarians, but those under communist dictatorship, Visual Artists Guild is honored to present the Spirit of Tiananmen Posthumous Award to Dr. Frank DeBolla. Accepting on behalf of Dr. DeBolla is his son, Frank DeBolla. Please welcome Frank DeBolla.
Good afternoon and good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me and honoring my father, Dr. Frank DeBolla. Thank you, Ann Lau, and it's good to see you all again. I remember attending all the events as a child, in my teenage years, and then throughout the years, I guess probably the last 15, 20 years, you all saw me with my father every Memorial Day weekend. And I knew that we couldn't plan anything for Memorial Day weekend because we always had the Visual Artists Guild event at the Golden Dragon restaurant in downtown Los Angeles. But I really appreciate you all taking the time to honor him and to think of honoring him with this award. I'm joined with my wife, Alina, and our new baby, 7-month-old baby, Aniko, here this afternoon. And throughout the years, my father was a staunch advocate for freedom for all people throughout the world, not only us Hungarians, with our struggles. And so it's very important to us, being Eastern European, Hungarian. We understand what it means to have, forces, against you where you can't speak your mind, and so forth. So again, thank you all for having us. We encourage anybody who's not a member or who's kind of hesitant on participating, please do so. It's a very, very worthwhile cause. All the presenters here, all the organizers here, we only have one goal, and that's for freedom and democracy throughout the world. So on behalf of myself, Frank de Bolog, and my family, thank you again for honoring my father, and have a great rest of the event.
Thank you so much, Frank. The Visual Artists Guild is grateful for all of your family's support sincerely. Please now welcome also Visual Artists Guild board member Veronica Raymond, who will present our next award to Dr. David Matus and the posthumous award to Mr. David Kilgore. David Kilgore passed away last year.
Today, the Visual Artists Guild is proud to give the Spirit of Tiananmen Award to both David Kilgore and David Matas of Canada for their efforts in documenting and combating illegal organ harvesting by the government of China. They traveled to about 50 countries to raise awareness. They co-authored several reports which expose the tens of thousands of harvested organs from unwilling dissidents and members of minority, ethnic, and religious groups. The evidence of the mass killing of prisoners of conscience for their organs is overwhelming. This practice is being used as a tool of oppression, genocide, and profit. The victims have been Chinese citizens who oppose the Communist Party of China, practitioners of Falun Gong, Uyghurs, Tibetans, and Christians. David Kilgore was a human rights activist, prolific author, lawyer, and politician. He was a member of the Canadian Parliament for 27 years. As a high-ranking Canadian cabinet minister, he was continuously vocal on international human rights violations. He passed away in 2022 at the age of 81. We would also like to honor David Matas, who worked with Mr. Kilgore, uncovering the horrific crimes of forced organ harvesting. Mr. Matas has a long career in supporting human rights as a lawyer, professor, author of many reports, and member of numerous government commissions and international delegations. In recognition of Mr. Matas' dedication to raising the world's awareness to the atrocity of forced organ harvesting, we are proud to present him with the Spirit of Tiananmen Award, along with David Kilgore. First, we will hear from David Kilgore's widow, Laura Scott Kilgore. She will accept the award for her late husband, followed by Mr. David Matas. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much for recognizing my husband David's work and for highlighting really the work of thousands of people who are working to stop the atrocity of murder through the harvesting of organs of innocent victims chosen only because of their ideas or ethnicity. When David retired from politics 17 years ago, he accepted a request to do some research on the claims against the government of China and certain medical practitioners that really needed some investigation. He really didn't expect it to become his life work. And he was still working on it, on the phone, on Facebook, a week before he died last year. Now, when he died, he had gone, as mentioned, to many countries around the world. And when they went, it was to provide not just the occasion to speak to parliaments, to speak to the community, the medical community who did transplants within these countries, but it also was to provide some skills and awareness to people who wanted to highlight this work in their own country. And when David died last year, I received emails from all over the world, from groups who gave me the highlights of the visit that they had and what skills they got from David. So really, I thank you for recognizing this work, which is certainly ongoing because it hasn't stopped. And I'm sure David Matus will be providing a lot more information. But there are thousands of people around the world who are focusing their efforts on this and other human rights abuses that, as you who are listening to this broadcast will realize, is coming out in many different ways through various communities associated with China and Hong Kong, where human rights are not valued and where it is very important that the rest of us raise the awareness and help victims of these kinds of oppression. So I thank you again on behalf of my husband, but really on behalf of this whole community of people around the world who are focusing their efforts on this atrocity.
We welcome David Matus.
Okay, thank you very much. I too welcome receiving the Spirit of Tiananmen Award from the Visual Artists Guild. Initially, I was puzzled when I received notification of the award for two different reasons. One is that I'm not a visual artist. The website of the Guild gives an explanation. It states that the Guild holds the belief that the right of freedom of expression is the lifeblood of all artists, that its mission is to bring to the world attention whenever such a right is threatened or suppressed. The Guild accordingly stands not just for the freedom of expression of visual artists, but for the freedom of expression of all. That, of course, makes eminent sense. Those who suppress free expression make no distinction between visual artistry and other forms of expression. A threat to one form of expression is a threat to all forms of expression. If we are to combat threats to freedom of expression effectively, those engaged in various forms of expression should join in solidarity each with the other. That is the spirit, as I see it, of Tiananmen, freedom of expression for all. The actions of the Visual Arts Guild, by acting on the need for solidarity, are exemplary. A second reason I was initially puzzled on hearing that I was to be given this award was that though I'd been the target of some attempts to curtail my freedom of expression when standing against international human rights violations, these attempts were insignificant compared to what those who've lived in the countries about which I was expressing concern have suffered. Yet here too, on reflection, I appreciate the point being made. The point of the award, at least to me, is not so much that I was seriously harmed because of what I said or wrote, as that in relative terms, I was not. I admittedly have not been left completely alone. I received over the internet a death threat from Chinese police the office of an NGO hosting one of my speeches about China was the object of a drive-by shooting because of the hosting. A book David Kilgore and I wrote about organ transplant abuse in China has been banned in China and Russia. The Russian banning was found by the European Court of Human Rights to violate the European Convention on Human Rights. Several attempts to arrange speaking events for David Kilgore and me have failed because of objections to the planned venues from Chinese government agents abroad. And David Kilgore and I were both, with others, present at a rally in Paris against the government of Iran, which was the target of a thwarted bombing attempt. Yet these were minor incidents compared with what nationals of repressive countries like China have to risk and endure. As Chinese human rights lawyer Gao Jisheng has eloquently said and tragically experienced, in China, if you become a human rights advocate, you become a human rights victim. People like me, who are not nationals of countries of repression, who have no political or economic or familial or organizational ties which they jeopardize through expression of criticism of human rights violations abroad, have an opportunity for expression that others do not. Regrettably, all too many forfeit that opportunity through indifference or ignorance or insularity. In a country like China, it is important for outsiders to speak out because insiders cannot. I have been focused in particular, as you've heard, along with David Kilgore, on organ transplant abuse in China, the mass killing of prisoners of conscience for their organs sold to transplant tourists and wealthy and well-connected locals. I'm well aware that anyone who in China raises the concerns we have raised puts their work, their freedom, their lives, and the security of their families at risk. The right to freedom of expression, like any right, withers if it is not exercised. To keep freedom of expression alive when most directly victimized cannot speak out, those of us who face far less danger from speaking out must become the voice of the voiceless. When David Kilgore and I have protested organ transplant abuse in China with prisoner of conscience victims, we are saying what the victim communities in China would say if only they could. By doing so, we stand not only against organ transplant abuse in China, we stand also for freedom of expression. So I want to express both my thanks for this award and my appreciation for the reasons, as I understand them, why I have received it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David and Laura. We're so thankful to David Matas and David Kilgore for bringing worldwide attention to these important human rights issues. I now would like to bring in Peggy Chain, another of our board members, to present the Spirit of Tiananmen Award to photojournalist Catherine Bouknight.
Thank you, Tony. On behalf of the Visual Artists Guild, I am proud to present the Spirit of Tiananmen Award to photojournalist Catherine Bouknight. She is an ongoing human rights representative for oppressed peoples worldwide. Using her tools of still photography and documentary film, she tells the political, cultural, and economic stories of women's rights and the Me Too movement. Her Catawba Indians of South Carolina exhibit and the 8-time award-winning documentary film, Hawaii, A Voice for Sovereignty, were both featured at the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. She has also given a platform to the voiceless in Peru, Ethiopia, and the Dominican Republic. It is fitting that Catherine win an award with Tiananmen in the title. She photographed the demonstration throughout the night of June 3rd and morning of the 4th in 1989, when the People's Liberation Army shot and killed thousands of students peacefully demonstrating for democracy. Her photographs of the event were among the first to be shown around the world. She has worked for Time Magazine, Rolling Stone, Newsweek, USA Today, and the New York Times. She currently shoots photography for the international news agency Zuma Press, among others. I am honored to present the Spirit of Tiananmen Award to Catherine Bouknight.
Thank you, Peggy and the Visual Artists Guild. The Spirit of Tiananmen Award is deeply appreciated My goal as a photojournalist and filmmaker is to document the similarities and differences of humanity and hope to help eliminate the fear of the unknown. I believe the family of mankind can unite with a higher awareness. The assignment to document the peaceful protests for democracy in Tiananmen Square changed my awareness to see that all people do not have equal rights. On the night of June 3rd, 1989, 45 minutes after I arrived in Tiananmen Square, the soldiers began shooting innocent people who were peacefully protesting in the crowd, reported to be approximately tens of thousands. The crowd led me through a tunnel of people to help me photograph this event as it happened. For the free world, some would say. I remained documenting this event as mostly students were shot and wanted me to document their movement for democracy for then and for the future. I left the square as bullets were ricocheting at my feet. I vowed that I would always remember a voice, or always remain a voice for those who have no voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Your contributions to women's rights and minority rights are an inspiration for all of us. I remember Venerable Palden Gyatso from when he came to the Amnesty International conference in Los Angeles. He was really a kind, gentle man who managed to engage me with a nice hug and a smile, regardless of all the suffering he had endured. Venerable Palden Gyatso is known as the Tibetan monk who was imprisoned by the government of China for longer than any other. He endured some 33 years of prison filled with torture, having never committed an actual crime. After his release, Palden Gyatso was obligated to live in exile. But instead of letting this injustice be the end of his life story, Venerable Palden Gyatso went on to make his story a call for justice and a warning to the world about the Communist Party of China's dictatorship. Venerable Palden Gyatso spent the rest of his life advocating for human rights, freedom of speech, and especially the freedom of religion in Tibet and for all people in China, until he passed away in 2018. Here is a short clip of an interview of Palden Gyatso.
While you were imprisoned, how did you maintain compassion towards your Chinese captors?
I'm an ordinary Dharma practitioner, and being a monk, it is inappropriate for me to think evil of others, and besides, I have learned that it is useless to be angry with them. Anger only begets anger, and it's only going to get worse if you react like them to them. Tolerance, patience, and compassion is the basis to overcome or to stop this, and on the large scale to world peace. And so this is what I believe. I have, in my autobiography, I have written that even though you have tortured me for 33 years, I have no grudge against you. Before the Chinese came into Tibet, the Tibetans were very happy and satisfied with their livelihood and their society. Most of the people were farmers and others were nomads. People had a lot of freedom. People enjoyed a lot of freedom to travel to other countries like Nepal and India. We didn't need any pass or anything, any legal documents. People enjoyed a lot of freedom. Our religion and culture was very rich, and hence people were satisfied with their life and very happy. Ever since Chinese occupied Tibet, it has changed. They have been killing our people, torturing our people. And it's been continuing, and it's now 40 years. They're continuing to do like this. I would like to request you all, members of Students for Free Tibet and other organizations that support us. First of all, I would like to thank you for your what you are doing for us, and then I would like to request you to help us get the rights which are based on the principles on which the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has been written.
The Visual Artists Guild hereby bestows the Champion of Freedom of Speech Award to Venerable Palden Gyatso for his lifetime advocating for the human rights of the Tibetan people, as well as for all people in China. Accepting this award on behalf of Venerable Palden Gyatso is the president of the Tibetan Association of Southern California, Sitin Phanu Charas. Please welcome Sitin Phanu Charas.
Hello, and Tashidele to all the attendees and viewers. My name is Sitin Phanu Charas. As the president of the Southern California Tibetan Association, I am honored to receive Visual Artists Guild's Champion of Freedom of Speech Award posthumously on behalf of Venerable Palden Gyatso, whom Tibetans refer to as Kusho Pandey Gyatsola. Kusho Pandey Gyatsola was born in 1933 in Panang, a village in central Tibet. At the age of 10, he joined a monastery and became an ordained monk at 18. He won a place at Drepung, one of the 3 great monasteries of Tibet, located just outside of Lhasa, the capital. In 1959, he witnessed the beginning of the March 10th uprising from the north gate of Norwolenga, the residence of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. When he returned to his monastery, it was in an uproar, and his teacher urged him to leave Drepung. With 2 other monks, he fled to his home village. Kusho Pandey Gyatsola was not safe at his local monastery either, as communist officials soon arrived to interrogate him and the other monks and to start the campaign to indoctrinate them into communist ideology. He was accused of being a reactionary. His local monastery teacher was accused of being an Indian spy, and he of helping him. So with this, thus began Kusho Pandey Gyatsola's detention and imprisonment. In 1962, he escaped, but was caught near the Indian border. His prison term was increased to 15 years, which would finish in 1975. But he was not allowed to go home, and he was put in a labor camp from which he escaped in 1979. He put up posters advocating for Tibetan independence. He was caught again and sentenced to 9 more years. During his incarceration, he suffered innumerable tortures and deprivations. He had a cattle prod shoved down his throat, which caused him to lose most of his teeth. So when I met him, he had almost no teeth. He was released in August of 1992 following a campaign by Amnesty International and others calling for his freedom. But one thing, he was very smart. I've met many political prisoners, but he was the one who was able to bribe guards to bring the samples of the torture instruments used on the prisoners. So after his release, 13 days later, he escaped to India, bringing with him those torture instruments. After his escape into freedom, Pandey Gyatsola, he never rested. He traveled widely in Europe and US, bringing attention to the shocking treatment of Tibetan prisoners by communist officials. He showed those torture instruments, and it was very vivid example for all of us. It was shocking for all of us to see what was being used on the prisoners. In 1995, he testified before the UN Human Rights Commission, and the United States Congress. He published a book in 1997 titled Autobiography of a Tibetan Monk. He visited Southern California several times and spoke before multiple audiences. In 2000, at the age of 69, he joined us in the March for Tibetan Freedom from San Diego to the Chinese consulate in Los Angeles, a distance of walking 150 miles. His last visit to Southern California was in 2012 at the age of 79. I was honored to get to know him personally, and his most notable qualities was resiliency and compassion. He forgave those who made him suffer so much, which is, it's such an example for us in today's world. Unfortunately, the situation in Tibet has not gotten any better since his passing in 2018. There is still no freedom of speech or religious practice. There are still communist minders in every monastery, and communist CCP actions in Tibet today are more blatant and egregious, including forced relocation of nomads into towns and cities. Nearly 80% of Tibetan children are being forced into communist boarding schools where they cannot learn their own language or their culture, and they're taught about communist ideology from as young as 6 years old. 6 to 18 are being forcibly removed from their parents and sent to boarding schools. So unfortunately, things have not gotten better, but nevertheless, we need to continue to struggle. So for today, I want to thank Visual Artists Guild, and I've known Anne Lau for over 30 years. So we appreciate everything Visual Artists Guild continues to do every day. And on behalf of the Tibetan Association of Southern California and Tibetans everywhere, I'd like to thank Visual Artists Guild for recognizing Venerable Pandey Kasla for his unflagging work as a champion for freedom of speech. Thank you very much. So I know it's with this lighting, it's very hard to see, but anyway, here it is, the award. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Seaton, very much. Standing up for the right of freedom of religion is very important to protecting all human rights. And we all know human rights abuse anywhere is human rights abuse everywhere. I would like to bring in another of our Visual Artists Guild board members, Lena Wu, who will present an award to Peng Lifa, Han Wang, and all the white paper dissidents. Please welcome Lena Wu.
Thank you, Tony. I am going to share with you a series of events leading up to this time. On April 1st, 2022, Shanghai started a 4-day COVID lockdown, which stretched it into several weeks. Soon, we started seeing videos of children and babies who tested positive and were separated from their parents. As the lockdown continued, social media showed people complaining about lack of access to food. We also saw videos of people getting beaten up by COVID-19 enforcers called Big White. As people tried to escape, the government installed barbed wire on fences and even made electric fences. An Apple factory and the local Chinese government tried to prevent workers from leaving that factory after an outbreak of COVID-19. This caused a massive exodus from the factory of over 200,000 people. Then on October 13, 2022, Peng Lifa, a physicist and a democracy activist, displayed a protest banner on the Sitong Bridge in Beijing, opposing the Chinese government's zero COVID policy, as well as calling for human rights and democracy. As part of the zero COVID policy, apartments all over China had locked exits. On November 24, 2022, a fire broke out in an apartment building in Urumqi, Xinjiang province. Since the building was locked from the outside, even the firefighters couldn't help people escape. As a result, at least 10 people died. Due to all of these tragedies, protests erupted in major cities across China, including Urumqi district in Shanghai. In December 2022, university students started a silent protest by holding up a white piece of paper, asking to end the zero COVID policy. Here are some videos.
你找黄东，你打电话给黄东，让黄东帮你解决问题。我昨天晚上刚完。昨天晚上6点钟没有做过核酸的人全部变黄码。
风险给上海他们这边送救援物资，到了这里也没人收货，也没人管，我们也没有饭吃。
家多好啊！这么多人，你看一下，隔离在一起，一个应急措施都没有，一个口罩也没有，一个防火也没有，连个医护人员走进来都没有。
无人是我眼中泪，无人懂我的疲惫。
哎，你们这样不对啊！我们已经清归零了，你们还要把我们圈起来？你看还要弄这个铁丝网，把我们当集中营了。好了，李强明天宣布，上海青浦区白鹤镇新疆居委会解冻。
起来，起来，起来！我们万众一心，冒着烈日炮火， 前进，冒着敌人的炮火，前进，前进，前进。
I have the honor to introduce someone who is making history and always grabbing headlines. Han Wang is a graduate student at the University of Southern California. He has been organizing and participating in many activities to support human rights in China. In November 2022, he organized a candlelight vigil for the victims of the deadly Xinjiang apartment fire that killed 10. He also organized a white paper movement in USC to support the white paper movement in China. In December 2022, he went on a 7-day hunger strike outside of Apple's headquarters in Silicon Valley to protest the company's human rights records in China. For his courage and his willingness to speak out for those who are suffering in China, Visual Artists Guild proudly presents Han Wang with the Champion of Freedom of Speech Award. In addition, Visual Artists Guild is presenting the Champion of Freedom of Speech Award to Peng Lifa and all the dedicated people who worked on the white paper movement. Mr. Han Wang will accept the award on behalf of them, and they are saving people's lives.
Thank you. Thank you. First, I want to thank you, Visual Artists Guild and Lena, and also Anne and Tony for inviting me here and for organizing this event. And even though this award is related to the people in the Tiananmen peaceful protest, but I want to appreciate not only the people 34 years ago, but also some people who inspire me of the process of me becoming an activist. I want to appreciate the people in Hong Kong. In 2019, their aspiration toward freedom just impressed me and shocked me. They walk on the street, 2 million people walk on the street. They are decentralized but disciplined. They were spontaneous but courageous. And their behavior just inspired me and make me do some motions in my life. And I knew that at the moment, the awareness toward this regime is not enough, but action is the most important thing. And then I will just appreciate some independent journalists at the originating state at the pandemic of COVID, like Fang Bing, Chen Qiushi, and Zhang Zhan, who just search for the truth. And this truth taught us that this regime, or what they have done, the suppression of basic human rights, had not only just suppressed the human right itself, but also sometimes they killed people's life. And during the pandemic, 3 years in pandemic, I have participated in different protests here. And then there is a Sitong incident. So I really want to appreciate Peng Lifa, who fights against the dictatorship alone at the capital of these big empires. As Roman Roland said, there is only one true heroism in the world, to see the world as it is and love it. And I believe Peng Lifa not only love it, but also fight for it. So, which just inspired a lot of people in the white paper revolutions. So at last, I would just appreciate the people in the white paper revolutions, because in my stereotype, I believe the Chinese people were indifferent to politics and sometimes a little indifferent to the people's life, but hopefully I was wrong. And when they just walk on the street to chant CCP step down, Xi Jinping step down, and they chanted, they stand with the people in Urumqi, I realized that the courage and I realized the empathy towards people. Also, I want to say that A4 Revolutions is a decentralized event. So as a part of them, I want everybody here to pay attention to the human rights in China, to the people in China, to the people who has been detained in the A4 revolution, even if some of them have been released right now, but a lot of them have not. So thank you for Visual Artists Guild again, and thank you for Lena and Tony. Thank you.
Thank you, Han. I understand the great sacrifice you guys have made in order to come out and bring attention to the tragedies of the COVID-0 policy in China. And many of the white paper dissidents have disappeared. Although some have been released, we all together also hope that the rest of the dissidents will soon be released. Now please welcome Julie Zhu, Vice Chairperson of the Visual Artists Guild, who will present the Champion of Freedom of Speech Award to Jimmy Lai.
Thank you, Tony. Jimmy Lai is a prominent Hong Kong businessman and media publisher, as well as a major contributor to the Chinese pro-democracy movement and the Hong Kong Democratic Party. Despite his British citizenship, he chose to remain in Hong Kong to advocate for the rule of law and basic freedom for Hong Kong. After a successful business career, Jimmy Lai established Next Media and Apple Daily. Apple Daily became the most trusted news sources in Hong Kong. Due to his support of the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement and Apple Daily's editorial in China, Jimmy Lai came under intense condemnation from the Communist Party of China. Even though he received numerous threats and bombs thrown at his home and office, he stayed true to his own values. In 2020, Apple Daily denounced China's imposed national security law. Subsequently, the government froze Apple Daily's assets and forced it to shut down in 2021. Here is an excerpt from the interview of Jimmy Lai by Brad Leaks in 2020 at the Liberty Forum.
Because my family was rich, so when the communists took over, we became the Brad Five, family, people that was marginalized. So the whole family was shattered, and my mother was in labor camp. My father had the chance to leave for Hong Kong. And when I was very young, I had to work and to keep ends meet with my twin sister and the sister who has a little bit mental problem. So I had to work, and I was, when I was barely 10, not even 10, I had to work in a railway station, take the baggages for the passengers to get tips. And because of that, I had the information about the outside world. I knew how wonderful the outside world was. That was a privilege. And eventually I was convinced by the passenger who always asked me, hey, why do you escape to Hong Kong? Because the way I was dressing was much better than all the other kids, all the other porters, helping them to helping the baggage. Because I was wearing the old clothing of my father, my brother, and all that, that was so. And one day, a gentleman who was, who came from Hong Kong, I carried the baggage for, was biting a bar of chocolate when he arrived at the tricycle, and he gave me the tips. And then with one hesitation, he also gave me the bar of chocolate in his hand. And I turned around and ate it. I said, wow, this is wonderful. What it is? He says, chocolate. I said, where are you from? Hong Kong. So I've been thinking to go to Hong Kong. And I said, wow, Hong Kong must be heaven. So I was so determined. And I persuade my mother to allow me to go. Eventually, she allowed me to go, and then I left for Macau with a permit, and then I was in the bottom of the boat, still off to Hong Kong when I was 12. The same day I was put in the factory to work as an off-job worker, and from then on, the freedom of Hong Kong gave me so much hope and opportunity that I was able to be what I am. Well, the June 4th massacre happened in 1989. This gave me the idea that there's no way China is going to reverse its way. China is going to be liberalized. And for young businessmen, at that time I was 40 years old, and I had made enough money for a person. So I thought there's no better business to go into the media business, delivering information which is the same as delivering freedom. As a young businessman, and get into the business of delivering freedom was an exciting business. And that was the right decision, although I was wrong about China. China did not get liberalized, instead, reverse its way to be more dictatorial and authoritarian. Well, Hong Kong is a place that I really appreciate the freedom, because of its freedom, it's given us all that we have. The good business, the hope, and aspiration. And this is so precious. It's so precious that we have to protect it. It's something like sacred. And it's just my instinct, or because my gratitude to this place, that I think it's my duty to do whatever I can to fight for freedom and keep the rule of law here. It's just an instinct. I was not doing in the sense of doing something for the society or to whatever cause. I was doing it just naturally, my own character, my own way of thinking that my life is not about myself. My life is about something more than myself. And fighting for it makes my life so much more meaningful. If I was just a rich man, a businessman, life was very boring until I really start to fight for the rule of law and freedom here. My life changed. Every morning I woke up, I feel so energized. I feel that there's a purpose in my life. There's a meaning in my life. That changes my life. Whatever comes now, even if I have to go to jail, which is very likely, I don't regret it. I just consider it as a redemption of the life that I have had. What's so wonderful. I'm prepared for anything. Even if I have to suffer jail time, I think God will suffer with me, and in His grace, whatever suffering I have, I will only be a better person. If I can be a better person, whatever suffer I have to face.
For his courage, his persistence, and dedication to the human right of the freedom of press, Visual Artists Guild is honored to present to Mr. Jimmy Lai the Champion of Freedom of Speech Award. Jimmy Lai is currently still in jail. His son, Sebastian Lai, will accept the award on behalf of Jimmy Lai.
Hello, my name is Sebastian Lai, and on behalf of my father, I would like to thank the Visual Artists Guild for giving this award to him. Tiananmen Square was a pivotal moment in my father's life. It was when he decided to start Apple Daily and campaign for democracy in Hong Kong. So I'm sure he'll be incredibly grateful for this award, and I ask that you continue to shine a light on what is happening to my father and what is happening in Hong Kong. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian. We will all continue to advocate for your father's release. I now bring back Ann Lau, Chairperson of the Visual Artists Guild.
Thank you, Tony. We'd like to congratulate and thank all our honorees and the representatives who are here today for the support of the issue of human rights. Sharon Harm, please bring everybody back on screen. We'd like to invite everyone to be on screen right now. And if you can click on your screen button, you can come on screen. Everyone, please. I'd like to invite every participant to be on screen. So first, we'd like to thank Sharon Harm, our honoree, Frank DiBarlo, who is representing his father, Dr. Frank DiBarlo, Judy Kilgore, represented David Kilgore, David Matus, Catherine Bonite, Seaton, representing Peldon Jiasu, Han Wang, Sebastian Lai, representing Jimmy Lai. We also like to thank our presenters who are members of the board of the Visual Artists Guild: Veronica Raymond, Peggy Howard Chen, Tony Gabriel, Lena Wu, Julie Shu. Our program host, Rick Velez, member of the board of Visual Artists Guild. I'd like to also now bring in everyone and acknowledge everyone who are here today. Please turn on your video so we can recognize you individually. Eleanor Young, Tong Xun, who is from the Vietnam Human Rights Network, Jeremy Taylor, who has been especially active in New York. Let's see, who do I see? Tracy Go. I don't see her, but she's here. She's with Amnesty International. Let's see, Simon C., Spencer Chen, Samsam Chen. I don't see her either. They have to turn on your videos. Let's see, who else? Emma Sue. Let's see. Joyce Wolf, who is from Amnesty International. James Zimmerman, who is from Amnesty International. He's been with us almost every year, and she's been a specialist on China. Nelson Yun, and Ken Aaron, and who else who is here, waiting for them to come up. Dai Li, who is very active in a lot of things throughout the years, and Andrew Shang. Let me see who else. Hao Yun Lin, Nelson Hai Liu. I don't see them, but they haven't turned on, and they haven't turned on the video yet. Jing Shang, Jing is with Chinese human rights, women's rights in China, and we have honored her organization and her the year before. And Samsam Chen is here. And Kai Liu, I don't see the video yet. Who else is here? Oh, I see Kai Liu. And who else is here that I see? I think we should have more people coming up. We need, if they want to appear, we don't see Terry Choden, we don't see Mary Tang, Helen Morrison, Yan Liu, Tobias Shamston, Zhang Mei. Let me see who else is here. Oh, Goldie's son. Maybe I should get another view. I don't know how to look at another view. How do I do that? So I can see. I guess it runs out of the view. Oh, let us get out. I don't know how to go to the next view. Anyway, want to thank everyone because without you, oh, and that's Grace Aaron. I see her. And oh, Maxine Russell, I don't see her screen, but she's here and I see her name, but she hasn't turned on her video. Oh, and Leslie and Hector, they are very supportive and they have been actually helping us with our preparation. Yong Liu, he's here. How Yulin, let's see who else is here. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, let's see who else. Maxine Russell, I don't see. Then you Chan somewhere. I guess my screen, I don't know how to get out of my, get into the next screen somehow.
Can you show view on top to gallery?
Okay. Ken is telling me how to do it.
That's right.
How do I turn on another?
In the middle of the screen on the right and the left.
On the right, on the left?
Yes, there's 2, 2, 1, 1. 1 of 2, 2 of 2.
On the top?
No, on the sides.
On the side view? Okay.
I could do it. I could run through the names quickly just to make sure that we catch everybody, if you'd like,
I don't know
Anne.
how to do. On the right hand side?
Please excuse my pronunciation. Is that okay, Anne? Zubaira Shamsuddin.
Oh, you see them?
Shi Zhu, Terry Doyle, Tenzin Chanden, Paul O'Neill.
Yeah, Tencent.
Patrick
I don't
Ma,
see Tencent. I know Tencent is here. But
Yingling Cui, Mary
Yeah.
Ting, Mark Neese, Luis Ephraim, James Yi, Helen Morrison, Cheng Sun, Barry Taft, Godi Sun. And I think you mentioned all the other people who were on the panelist list.
Turn 5.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, and Lois Epson. So I
I
still
want
don't
to
know
thank
how
you
to.
all so very much. If there's anyone who was not called and would like to be called, because we were technologically, at that age, I am. So please raise your hand. You just push raise your hand. And we'll call on you too.
Yeah. And if you talk, then we can see you. If you turn on your speaker, then you probably come up better too. So anyway, we are really grateful to all of you in participating at this program. We have worked very hard to produce this program. We have watched hours and hours of videos to synthesize this 5 minutes of videos. We have gone through YouTubes of many recordings and to select the right recording for our event. And I cannot thank my team, our whole visual artist guild team, for the hours of work they have done in order to do this program, especially for those that have their full-time job and then come home after the full-time job and work on trying to put this whole program together. We are members of this group that we are dedicated to human rights and for the people in China, Hong Kong, Tibet, Uyghurs, and all over the world. And for us, we are so grateful for all of you in participating. And of course, without all of you, we won't have this commemoration. And we appreciate your participation, your patience, your time spending with us. And if you have any questions, just email us and let us know what you would like to do in the future or for next year, and especially who you think that you might want us to honor next year. There's a whole year in front of us, and keep your information, pay attention to what is happening in China. And I hope that through this years, we will help to bring some of the people home. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
何以為信念